Have you been noticing all of these incentives on these new cars, trucks, and SUVs? Incentives we haven't seen forever. 0%, 72 months, 0% on 60 months, 0% on just about everything. And yet, people are not buying. Sure, while some sales are going up, of course, some trucks are still holding their own. That's only because major incentives are rolling down the queue. So ask yourself, why are there so many incentives? Because, well, people aren't buying. I mean, let's be quite honest with you. The car market is not what it used to be. 2 or 3, 4 years ago, things were off the charts. People were buying cars sight unseen, overpaying, and spending money that they never even dreamed that they spent on a truck or a car. And they were willing to spend much more even over sticker price just to get their new dream vehicle. But things have changed. Now we're in 2025 and clearly there's a newfound attitude. But it's more than just the cost. I mean, we all talk about why are people not buying cars right now? Why are people not buying new cars? It's quite shocking, actually, because sales are not doing all that well. And I've been down at a lot of car lots talking to some general managers and sales folks across the industry and even bankers. I've got a good friend that's upstairs in the banking industry and kind of says, you know what? Sales aren't that high right now. You know, even with interest rates that just recently dropped, the Fed's dropped the numbers. Of course, Bank of Canada just dropped the numbers slightly. And yet people are not necessarily buying. While there's a bit of a buying frenzy on some of the EVs, that's only short-lived because that's people trying to beat those federal tax credits. Now, outside of that, what's going on? Why is it so shocking that people are not buying cars? Well, I mean, first of all, the basic economics, and I want to talk about some of the major reasons, but one of them is the economy, the basic economics. People don't have the money. They're broke. People are broke, okay? Or some people are broke. Some people have the money, and it's often, many are arguing and saying, well, it's the ultra wealthy that are pretty much the only ones keeping a lot of these dealerships in business. And I would kind of tend to agree with that. Because people are generally, and by and large, looking to keep their money in their wallets, if they have any. People are stretched pretty thin, paper thin, looking to try to, buy that next burger, keep food in the mouths for them and their family. Roof over the head. Those are all challenges right now. And so a new car seems to be lower on the priority list. Things have not been like this for quite some time. And we think back to 2008, some serious economic crunch time. And we've seen this sort of bubble and building and development, and people have been buying and buying and buying, and inflation keeps rising. So they keep levering that and they keep the interest rates high because inflation's still blowing out of the proportion. But a lot of this inflationary increases are coming on the backs of just people spending money on core items, home, food, housing, and even the essentials, cars. But a lot of the cars now, people are buying used cars, older cars. And the idea of buying a brand new car just seems to be a lower priority for many people. Not just because they're ultra expensive. The average transaction price is now tipping the scale close to $50,000, and people simply don't have that kind of money. That's the average. That's blended average with some of those low-bought pieces of crap, come of those little entry-level Nissans or Mitsubishis that might cost you, $28,000 or 25 grand. The point is, that's the bottom of the spectrum. The top end, of course, you're talking the big trucks, the big SUVs, the Yukons and the Escapades. But on top of it, somewhere blended in the middle, $50,000. And also on top of that, the average car payment now is almost $800 per month. And now people are stretching that out to 6 or 7 or 8 years. And would you believe it? 20% of the population is actually, I never thought I'd say this, are spending over $1,000 a month. And that's US money. Canadian side, everybody's spending over $1,000 a month. And our buying power goes even that much less far. So people are making a decision. I don't have the money, or I do have the money. And in most cases, people are running out of money. That's a quick and obvious. That's an easy one. Just look around. The homelessness, the point of joblessness is rising. We're seeing in Canada, for example, the jobless rate of young people, so from 16 to 25, is now up around that 23, 24%. That's right. 1 in 4 is not working who are trying to work, and younger workers. On top of that, even people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, middle of their career, quite often just looking, to try to stabilize in a place that's not stable. Their work's not very stable. People are struggling to keep the roof over their head. We're hearing the tech market is kind of crumbling a little bit, and people just don't necessarily have the money. So again, people are keeping money closer to the chest. But it's more than just the dollars and cents. Because as I look around and as I kind of talk about, go through the videos, and as I do the research as well, on top of my other car channel, Exotic Car Play Place, I really dive into the idea of some of the reliability challenges, cars that are more reliable, some that are less reliable. And a big reason why people are now electing to almost backdate, either fix their old cars, their old trucks, like mine. I'm driving an '03 Ram and I'm perfectly fine with that. And a lot of people are. They're looking at their old trucks, their old cars, maybe put a set of brakes and tires and patch up that little rust spot on the back, and then they're good for another 4 or 5 years. More and more people are making that decision, or more and more people are buying that 5, 6, 7-year-old car, something that's sort of out of that major part of the depreciation. You know, you're kind of approaching the bottom end of the depreciation curve. See, because buying a 2 or 3-year-old car, you're still kind of facing a lot of that depreciation, and you're still about to take on some of the big issues that are about to be faced with, some of the repairs once warranties expired at 3 years. See, herein lies the conundrum. A lot of people realize too, and I've seen this, the landscape of the automotive industry is changing very dramatically and extremely quickly. And a lot of that is this evolution, this transformation to EVs or hybrids or big screens and technology. And a lot of these car engineers are much smarter, or they like to think they're a lot smarter than you and I, the buyers. But are they really that much smarter? I mean, we know what we like. We like a reliable car. Maybe we can fix it ourselves. That isn't going to cost us a lot of troubles. We can turn the key. We can get to work. We just put gas in it and call it a day. The problem is now with hybrids and EVs, these conversations become more complex. Range, temperature ranges for some of the batteries, technology, big screen. All of a sudden, how do you integrate Apple CarPlay and all of these new fandangled technologies? It means a lot of people are just getting done with it. We also can't forget the basic demographics, the aging boomers. And what we're looking at are those that are generally in the 60s and beyond, that are now a big part of the population, that are looking at all these techie cars with CarPlay and Android Auto and capacitive screens and haptic buttons, and realizing that's not for me. That's too complicated. I don't need to learn that. Just give me a good old-fashioned button and knob. And see, this is what's starting to happen. Why a lot of these new cars are not selling comes down to the price, which we see is getting out of hand. I mean, look at GM. What is it, 80, 90 grand for a truck? That new Ram, that Tungsten, 125 grand Canadian. I just saw the other day. It's no wonder people aren't buying those. All of these prices have gone through the roof. That's a big reason. But a secondary reason to that is a simple fact that people want to get something that's more reliable. Every time they turn around, they hear a car that has a new engine recall, a new problem, a transmission recall, a safety recall. NHTSA is littered with all kinds of problems that we're hearing from Hondas, Toyotas, Chevy, GM, Ram, Jeep. Every brand is struggling with recalls. So people look at this and they get gun shy. They get shell shocked by the fact that there's all of these problems staring down the barrel of something, all this new technology evolving to a place that's complicated to use, complicated to own, expensive shop rates, and quite frankly, people are just not interested. Rather, many people actually look at the idea that the most reliable cars likely peaked back around 2008 to 2014. In that range was sort of that sweet spot. Now, what you're finding are more people saying, look, I can find this great 2015. It's only got, 38,000 miles on it. Those are the gems. Now, more and more people are trying to get their hands on yesterday's news, yesterday's business. The car that didn't have the big screen, maybe had a small integrated screen. Maybe it was more buttons and switches. I mean, look at Volkswagen. They evolved into a full digital display, haptic and capacitive system. Buyers didn't want it. They spoke aloud. They said, no, we don't want that. Volkswagen quickly learned that, oh shoot, we're not selling cars. We better do something about this. And they retracted some of those controls and kind of reinstated some of the old school technology. See, this is a big part of what we're starting to see. And a lot of people are really holding these dealers and these OEMs accountable. While some people are always going to get on board and they want the latest and flashy tech and the big screens and all of the LEDs and the mood lighting and all of that greatness, there's always going to be those. But so many more people today are looking at the idea of keeping it simple, keeping it reliable, and a 3-cylinder turbo direct injected engine with a hybrid assist just doesn't feel like that much quality, and it feels like an engine and a drivetrain that might not hold up. So a lot of people are saying this is what is in the now. What was that manufacturer doing yesterday? Maybe it was a V6 and it was naturally aspirated, and instead of a CVT it actually has an older torque converter or a manual transmission. And that's what a lot of people are starting to realize, that all of this new technology is fun during the warranty period. But then what happens? Warranty's expired and you have to either move on, sell it, and jump ship. The problem is they've also looked at that and said a lot of these really technologically advanced cars are depreciating a lot faster than some of their older cars. There was a time when you'd look at, say, even a modern BMW or a 10-year-old BMW. In 5 years, they might lose about 40% of their value. Today, most non-M versions, or the non-variants, and most luxury brands now, including a lot of the new hybrids, including a lot of the new EVs, are more like 50 to 60% value lost in the first 5 years. So people are looking at paying more, losing more, and having a more technologically advanced, troublesome car when it's all said and done. So now you have this whole market full, swamped. Every manufacturer's trying to come out with something new and fresh and more innovative than the other manufacturer, and they're trying to outdo what they did before. Problem is, all these new swan-dangled engineers and a lot of these manufacturers are trying to outdo themselves. And there's always a new engineer. Hey, little Johnny, come on down, join the team. Well, little Johnny has something to prove, right? Little Johnny engineer decides he's going to outdo old Vern. Well, little Johnny says, hey, old Vern, you know what? Look at my screen, much more technologically advanced, sharper graphics. I use 4 screens now instead of your one little screen. How's that for apples? And old Vern says, I don't like them apples. And nor do many of the boomers. See, this is just the market we're in today. We're in a market where things are changing so damn fast. People want simple, but they're not getting what they want. And the price on top of it is just more insult to injury. So when you ask the question, why are vehicles not selling? Why are new cars not selling anymore? It's primarily price and too much tech. Ultimately is the strong standing answer. People just want simple and reliable. Direct injection seemed like a good idea until it started following up with carbon. Of course, now all these PCVs blocking off, the Mercedes, BMWs, the PCV valves are clogging off. A lot of it's oiling, a lot of it's, emissions controls. Of course, they carbon up, and next thing you know, you've got an expensive repair to take care of. Something that we never worried about back in the day. Back in the day, a little PCV for a little Honda back in 2012 would only cost you $40, and you could take 2 screws out and a wiring connector, and you'd have that thing retrofitted in 15 minutes. Not so is the case now. Modern day Mercedes-Benz, you could have it in the shop for 7 hours, and if it wasn't for an extended warranty, you could face yourself a $3,000 bill. See, this is where these cars have gotten. Where they had one little tube, now they got like 10 tubes that are intertwining, and things are far too complicated. For what? Emissions? EPA? Regulators? Absolutely, those are all of the above. Carb standards, smaller engines, better fuel economy, bigger turbos, smaller engines, smaller displacement, a little more hybrid assist. Now you have a very aggressive recipe for more tech and more failures. Ultimately, if you're wondering why new cars aren't selling, it's strictly that. I can't afford it. Many of you probably can't afford it, and we're waiting for prices to drop. But with all this technology overload, it's not a shocker when you see all of these incentives, as much as 72 months and 0% down, way before the year end when it typically hits, is a sign that people have stopped taking interest, and people are fixing their old junk or buying an older used car and skipping on some of these brand new cars. Now, there are some great new cars out there. Let's not be mistaken. This isn't about, a new car hate on. I love new cars, and there's some great new models, and I can talk about some of those in time coming up. But the fact is a general blanket statement. Cars are generally less reliable today, generally more expensive to fix, and generally going to cost you more at the end of the day once warranty's gone. Who wants that? Cheap and dirty and reliable. That's what buyers want. Anyway, hope to see each and every one in the next one, everybody. Hope to see you real soon. Bye-bye.